I'm so excited to introduce Picabo Street Olympic gold medalist and silver medalist. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Do you know the significance of this room?
I don't know the significance of this room. What is that anyway? I mean,
No,
what's the room for?
Think. I'll give you a hint. It's Winter Olympics.
That's the scoreboard?
Is
that the actual scoreboard?
Yeah.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah,
Are you serious?
Set to the time that...
With 3 seconds left on the clock.
3 seconds. Do you believe in miracles?
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally do. And that's like one of my favorite movies.
Isn't that cool?
I knew there was some cool stuff in this museum,
they're
but
so
I mean,
cool.
that takes the cake.
I know. This is amazing.
That is spectacular.
It's
That's
so
the
cool.
real one.
This is the real one?
Like, I can't even, I just got
know,
goosebumps.
I know, I did
like,
too.
Totally.
I know.
4-3.
I know. One of my favorite Olympic moments. Tell me some of yours.
I think the coolest thing about that moment is it's collective. Everyone from every corner of the world could feel the magnitude of that one. Yeah. I think that's why it's probably a lot of people's favorites. Obviously, personally, my favorite Olympic moment is standing on the podium receiving a gold medal, trying to keep it together and not, look like a crying, bumbling idiot up there whose dream just came true or his miracle just happened. So for myself personally, that's mine. But to like watch, I mean, there's been some gymnastics moments that have completely rocked my world, both from Mary Lou Retton getting a 10 to Carrie Strug landing, blowing her ankle apart, and then going back out again, right? Yeah. That's always super exceptional. Short track speed skating, watching Apollo, that sweaty palms, screaming at the top of my lungs, trying to keep track of who's where in the rotation, those are wonderful moments. Watching the basketball team, both men and women play, that's always spectacular for me, and to see like who plays for an NBA team or a WNBA team here in the States, and then they go play for their home country, and then they meet up in the games, right? It's kind of like how are they gonna maneuver that? So team sports are pretty intriguing for me.
But what so did you have anybody in snow sports that inspired you? I mean, like how did you find snow sports?
For sure, the Olympic seed plant for me came when I was 14 years old, and at 13 actually, I think, Sarajevo Games. And I had a coach in Sun Valley who coached the U.S. national girls. And so he brought them all to Sun Valley, and they all trained, and I got to see them. And I saw them in all their gear, and they're all strong and kind and, beautiful and brave. And I was like, ooh, I want to be one of them. And then shortly after, I see them racing. And I grew up without television, so when I did watch TV, it was kind of a big deal. So watching Sarajevo was like a trip to town to a friend's house. Everybody gets set up, we're watching. And I remember the orange and white striped suits that they wore by Descent. And the girls were super strong and did really well. Everyone was successful.
And Phil Mayer, right?
And Phil and Steve Mayer. And then Bill Johnson also did the Babe Ruth of I'm going to win tomorrow. And he did. And so that was the seed plant of, this is the pinnacle of the sport that I've fallen in love with. And this is what I want to go do. And I announced to my family very shortly after that that's what I was going to go do.
And your mom and dad were okay with that?
Yeah, they were cool with it. My dad turned around and goes, all right, all the family apples are going in your basket. Might get heavy. Don't drop it. And turned and walked away.
What?
I mean, if a snap was a thing, he would have done it.
I mean, your parents sound so interesting to me. I mean, I know that you've answered this a billion kabillion times, but I read recently that you actually named yourself. Is that true? Okay.
That's funny.
All right, okay.
So in a slight way, I might have. Okay, so my dad fell in love with the word peekaboo and loved it from the moment he saw it. Then when he found out it's an Indian word and it means shining waters, he really fell in love with it. And my mom was just like, we are not naming her that. Are you kidding me? Like, it's so mean, right? We love our daughter, don't we? Why would we give her that name? And so I'm actually baby girl on my birth certificate. I was delivered at home in a place called Triumph, Idaho. And it took my dad 4 years to talk my mom into going for it.
Wow.
Yeah, so when I got married, I looked at it on my birth certificate when I went in to get my marriage license, and I was like, I was almost 4. I called my mom, and she's like, technically you were still 3. But I was almost 4 when I got my name. And it was to get a passport to go to Mexico with my parents and travel. Because we traveled as in the winter times.
Okay, so then you saw snow sports on the Olympics, and then take me through, like, then how does someone get into a coaching or club, like it's a ski club situation, and Sun Valley, like how, because it's close. Tell me, how does someone find that?
So it found me.
Okay.
Not too unlike if you go to meet a litter of dogs, and pretty soon there's one that's like, take me home, and you're like, oh, you're my dog. It was similar. My brother and my dad went skiing without me. And when they got home, I was furious. I was livid all day long. Like, where have you been? Why didn't I get to go? And I was just had total FOMO. And they said, my dad said, you don't know how to do it. It's super expensive and you don't have any equipment. And I was like, I can take care of one of those, which is I don't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. So as soon as my brother turned his back, I slipped into his boots and grabbed his skis and poles and went hiking up in the backyard in the sagebrush and snow, and taught myself how to ski right there in the backyard. And I waited to show my dad that I knew how to ski so that I could have an invite until it was almost dark. And he came out looking for me, and I was like, what are you doing up there? And I'm like, what's this? And just skied down through the sagebrush, didn't fall down. I probably didn't make great turns, but it didn't matter. It was like how, and his mouth dropped open like Sebastian the Crab in The Little Mermaid, like, and then he was like, closed it back and was like, get in here. It's late, and he said to me, he turned around and went like, oh my goodness, like she totally just taught herself how she knows how. Like she just whacked one of my 3 out. And so I think it was that spring that he got me some gear and took me skiing.
And did you go with him then? Like after that, did he ski with you?
He skied with me. He went up in front of us, and my brother and I went up the lift. So the first chairlift right up, I was holding, this is back, I'm dating myself now, but I was back when the center pole was like, it's a 2-seater, and the pole was in the center. So I'm like over on the center as much as I can, because I thought my brother was going to push me off. So I was so afraid that he was going to push me off that I like got all mad and aggressive on the chairlift. So by the time I got off, I just went around the hill and just straight down to the bottom. I kind of swished a little side to side, like maybe try to slow down, turn, whatever, and then was just like, no way, fast is best, and just whom, straight shot to the bottom. My brother comes down, he's like, you're supposed to turn. I'm like, yeah, I tried a couple of those, they just slowed me down. I like this straight shot thing. And fell in love with it right away. And then I remember there was a race, I think the 3rd time I went skiing, 3rd or 4th day I went skiing. There was a race called the Kinder Cup, and it was happening on Dollar, and everybody was there in their outfits and their bibs on and their numbers, and they were all racing, and I was like, where's my bib? Why am I not racing? And I just was relentless.
Did you say that to your mom?
Said it to my mom and dad. Like, where's my bib? Why aren't I signed up? Why am I not getting to race? And they were like, we'll sign you up next year. We didn't even know about it, right? And so I remember the next year I had the hat with my name on it, and I was all ready to go. And I was so excited when I raced my first race that I didn't even put my goggles down. I forgot. They're like up on my head. And I just full send and went. And but I remember sitting there that year that I didn't race. And I mean, this is the tenacity. This is the Olympian inside in hiding that in retrospect I go, oh, that was her. I sat there leaning on my poles going like this, I'm going to beat you next year, and I'm going to beat you next year. No joke. Boys, girls, my age group above, whatever. And that was my thing. And it was funny because that was kind of what drew me into it. And so when I first started racing, it was like, let me beat everybody. But very shortly into learning how to ski and race, it was more about the challenge of dialing it all in and producing that performance, which you know a little something about.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But okay, so like if it sounds like you were a daredevil.
Yeah.
And a nature. So does that kind of kid automatically go to speed sports, or how do you find speed?
Interesting.
Yeah,
question.
Super G and downhill versus slalom and giant slalom. How do you choose?
So in the beginning, if you start early enough, you're forced to do GS and slalom.
Okay.
Because you're not actually allowed to race downhill and Super G until you're 15.
Okay. All right.
So everybody's in GS and slalom, which is great because giant slalom is the discipline where you actually learn how to turn, you learn how to maneuver your skis, you learn how to manage the speed. attack the course and charge. Slalom has always kind of been a little bit of an anomaly, and it still is today. Like 65% of the men's World Cup field that you watch race a giant slalom or a slalom, they're slalom specialists. They don't actually race anything else. Whereas you get a lot of athletes that'll race GS, Super G, and downhill.
Right.
So it definitely is a separation that starts to happen at a certain point. Everyone starts with the GS and the slalom, but pretty soon it's like, pretty obvious who those crazy speed demons are.
So is it like giant slalom
speed.
and slalom teach you it breaks down your what we would call edge and skating quality.
Yes.
So
exactly.
it's like then you can widen it out and you're like I have my foundation down.
Yes. So we call the slalom and GS team the tech team. And then the downhill and super Gers are the speed team.
So is it ever unusual for someone to choose, say, downhill and then slalom?
Yes.
Do they ever? Okay, so that's
or even weirder
Yeah.
for them to go from slalom to downhill. And
Oh, okay.
so it's kind of funny to watch a downhiller run slalom because they're just kind of hacking their way through it, and it's fairly entertaining. It's actually kind of scary to watch a slalom skier go race speed, particularly if they have fear. Because just the amount of work they have to do to get themselves into the spot where they're not afraid, they've replaced their fear with the task at hand, and then to just charge into going fast. Those are always the most impressive to me when I watch the races is who has fear and is racing with fear in downhill and super G. I mean, I never really had it. So it's
No
interesting.
fear.
Not really.
Yeah.
No.
Is there like a mentality of the Super G and downhill skiers versus do you guys kind of get inside, is there a character that's similar? Tell me about that versus the other.
Yes, there's for sure. I think just in real quick broad strokes, with the exception of a few people maybe, as downhillers and super Gers, we're just like, let's go, and let's race. Whereas the tech skiers are like, let's take 97 runs until we've got it perfect, and then we're gonna race. And I was like, let's get on with
Precision.
the racing. Yes, but it's the precision of it because it's so tight, right? And in giant slalom and slalom, there's 2 runs, and there's what they call a qualification in the first run. So you have to be in the top 30 after the first run in order to even make a second run. So it is a stacked house in there in the top 30. You see some kind of a little bit of tentative holdbacky kind of skiing going on, but then in the second run, it's like, they just open the floodgates and it's off to the races, and you get to see some really aggressive, brave skiing, particularly in the back of the pack. And I mean, when you look at it, sometimes there's 60, 70 racers, 80 racers that are all shooting for top 30. The top 5 are usually going to be pegged because the point system puts them in a starting spot where the course is at its sweetest, so they get the biggest advantage. And then they do the flip 30, and the person who wins the first run actually runs 30th in the second run. So they've got a lot of uphill climbing to do in that second run because there's been 29 people who've run the course in front of them, as opposed to their first run when they were probably picked in and around somewhere between 2 and 9 are usually the good numbers, or 1 and 7.
So the later you go in a race, the harder it is because the track is
100%.
torn up, and there's no grooming in between.
No, there's no grooming in between, and there's very few people who are even allowed on the course. And in the tech races, there's a lot of people along the sides. There's people in and out running, slipping in between racers. And in downhill and super G, it's a course freeze. So you get in place and you stand in place in your mannequin.
Wow.
Until the racers go by, because if you distract them visually as they're going, you can cause somebody to crash or whatever.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't feel that you could be distracted.
I don't either. So it's kind of an interesting thing, right? I would probably actually find humor in I wonder he's well, or no. Here's actually what happens, Brian. This is very interesting. I think there's some people who tunnel in. For me, I am totally aware of everything happening in my surroundings because I'm going so fast that I don't want any surprises.
Yeah.
So I know where my coaches are. I can see if they've got their glasses on or not. I literally can pay attention to a lot of stuff going along on the side of the course just because I didn't want to be in that tunnel and feel that claustrophobia.
That's
I want to be able to to feel it. And I love to hear the crowd screaming, and I love to hear the cowbells going, and I love to know that there's people watching, and it's, that's kind of the entertainment part of it. And it was part of my distraction from letting any fear or any, negative thoughts. I didn't really have fear until I broke my femur. But every now and then there's a negative thought that comes in of like a what if, and it's just like, no time for that.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask, where is the pressure, when you do feel fear, is it like two racers before you when you're up there getting ready to go in the starting gate? Is it right after you go out? Is it halfway? What's going through your mind on the whole thing? I think so many people think about that.
Yeah.
Wonder.
I think sometimes fear would creep in an inspection. When you're looking at the course, and say you're racing a place where the light gets flat, and you're wondering like, how flat is it going to be in this section? Because it's kind of rough, and I wish it was a little more smooth, but it's not. So I'm going to have to be on my game for this. So it's in that prep time of inspecting the course, which is about an hour and a half long, that we get to slide down the course and check it all out and get a feel for it, if you will. You're not allowed to put your skis in the fall line for more than 3 feet, and so if nobody's running any of the gates. Nobody's sending it at all. It's all just side slipping and checking it out. And in downhill, you're encouraged to go like fence line to fence line. So I know the whole course and all the terrain, even from the line that I'm wanting to ski all the way out to the fence. Because if you blow out of the course and you end up out there outside the fence, you want to know what obstacles are out there.
Right.
And we've seen some people hit some stuff that is, either wasn't supposed to be there or was supposed to be there, and they just ended up out there and,
That's interesting.
happenstance.
But how long do you have? I mean, I'm sure that there are courses, because you ski everywhere so many times. The courses, but
Most of them.
Yeah. How much time do you get before you actually race to go? How many times would you run a run before you?
So in downhill, you get 3 training runs on the course. So you'll get a look at it in the morning, and then you go kind of get organized, and then you go run a training course.
That's nothing, though.
And a lot of times you'll run, it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
This is one of the nuances that I'm trying to figure out right now is a lot of people will run giant slalom on their giant slalom skis to get them in that mode of turn, the feeling and the timing of, getting their turn done at the right time and getting a feel for their skis. And then they'll go jump on their downhill skis and go run a downhill run. Whereas we used to try and have our training course after inspection before a race be more like a downhill as much as we could. But oftentimes there's not enough snow for that. So they've just kind of morphed into this. Now they run GS. Some people will take 2 runs because their 3rd or 4th run of the day is really their great run. Some people will take 7 before they go because they've got that much stamina to run it that much. Most everybody will take at least 2 or 3 warm-up runs. Then you go to the lodge, you stretch out, you eat a little bit, you get organized and whatnot, and then the timing of when you go to the start based on how much time you want at the start is different for everybody. Some people like to be there and kind of, throwing it around and a little smack talk go on. Some people like to be more private and keep their headphones on. Some people like to do both, which is me. I would show up, not smack talk at all, but I'd have my headphones on and just kind of feel the vibe and the anxiety rising.
And do you know the times of everybody before you?
So when I raced, it was very rare for me to know the times. Now with modern technology,
you can't not.
It's hard to not, and you actually have to work as hard to not know as I did before to know.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that has flipped in racing since I retired they can literally, there's a camera up there where they can watch the run if they want to.
Wow.
Which can be a good thing and a bad thing, right? If somebody runs a line that you didn't think was possible and then they do it and then you're like, oh, I'm full send, I'm going to run that line, they just did it, that would have worked for me, right? To me, like, see somebody do it right and then be able to go do it as well. But if you see somebody crash, that could put you on your heels and make you a little bit nervous. You could second guess or question yourself when you're coming to a jump if you see someone crash on that. So I think everybody's different and everybody knows well enough, and they've got their team out there that they work on, either knowing or not knowing. It's different for everybody. But yeah, no, I usually didn't know, and I didn't care because the race, by that time, the race is between me and myself.
It's
what I mean?
How well you ski that day.
How well I'm skiing, how focused I am I confident? The only other thing that I ever had bring me fear for racing was, is my body going to respond the way that I need it to respond right now in order to do what I want to do? Can I ski the line that I want to ski that's going to be the most aggressive and have the highest probability of being the fastest line? And that was, towards the end of your career when your body kind of starts to break down on you a little bit. That's the yin and the yang that's going on in your heads. When you watch some of the older athletes race and you wonder why they're hot and cold, a lot of times that's why.
What about fitness? Because I read something in an article when you were young that your coaches used to get mad at you because you weren't in shape. So, but I'm guessing that didn't exist when you got to a certain level. Like when you were at the pinnacle, was fitness ever an issue? No,
it wasn't an issue once I finally got with the program. But I was kind of sideways in like, well, I'm naturally talented. I'm good. I'm just a downhiller. I don't have to train. And they were like, no, go strap them on, go run. So yeah, I did not embrace the dry land off hill training as much as I should have in the beginning. But I was 15 when I was put on the team. And then I got kicked off when I was 17 and back on when I was 18. And by then it was like, oh, I've got to add hard work to this natural talent and then some humility, mix all that together. And now I've got a chance of being
What was
successful.
the dry land stuff that you used to do?
I used to do everything from mountain biking to rollerblading to lifting weights in the gym. My favorite was Saturday free day, which you could go do some kind of fun activity that you wanted to do for an hour and a half or 2 hours. So I'd go play volleyball or, go hang out with my friends and play soccer on the field or something fun like that. But it was the regimented schedule in the mail, this recommended diet, all of that kind of stuff. And I think as a youngster, I didn't really want to be that special. I didn't really want to stand out that much from my friends. I wanted to kind of fit in more. Whereas now I think the kids are stoked to have that kind of special sport club going on and belong to it. So it's embraced much more today. And I remember sports science started really coming into my sport right as I was transitioning out. So I remember having to kind of change my mindset to, oh, this is bionicle and there is data around why it's good to do something this many times and rest this long between and then do this many times and not do that and, eat this and don't eat that. And I felt like we always ate too much pasta and they were like, you're burning the majority of the pasta you eat in calories on the hill trying to stay warm in the first place. And then your muscles don't have anything to be eaten when you get done with the day. So I remember it becoming a big deal of like the science behind it all.
And what was the aha moment that everything came together and you're like, I know it sounded like you thought, you were a little cocky when you were younger. And so, but what was the aha moment that you were like, wow, okay, I know this is serious and I know that I could be a really big contender. So where'd that happen?
I think there was a couple of moments when that happened for me. I think one was the robust team that was coming in to kind of focus on this sports science thing. And I'm thinking, these aren't slackers. Like, these are some pretty substantial people, very, very smart with some great resources. I need to listen to them, and all they want to do is make me better. So it was kind of maturing into accepting that. Another one was to train and do the program and then see the results start to come. Another one was having a couple of coaches be like, I want her on my team. She's going to win. We're going. And that belief in me that I caught wind of that they had said in a meeting about me. So I was stoked to race for them. And then you start to really recognize as you get older, the team that's behind you, that's really sacrificing in their lives in order to make this moment for you to run 2 minutes down a downhill as fast as you can happen. You start to really appreciate them and appreciate their support and how much they've got invested in it as well. And then you want to win for them too.
Did you have a race that was like, okay, I'm like, that was like your thing or
So I think I always kind of knew that it was going to be only a matter of time, right? I'd kind of like reeling them in slowly and wanting to keep track of it. I kind of have this idea in my head of, as you're climbing the ladder to the top, you want to step on every rung of the ladder on your way up so that you're in familiar territory no matter where you end up ever, right? So if you get hurt and you slide down to the second rung, you're like, oh, well, I've been here before. This is familiar territory. I know how to climb from here. And so that was something that I always did. So I wasn't in a hurry too much to really kind of climb that ladder. Like, I was close to making the Albertville Games in '92. And then I didn't make the team and I didn't race there. And so within the next couple of years, I had started reeling my competitors in and studying him really closely and watching and getting a feel for it. And then I remember in Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is ironic, the Olympics are coming there. I started either 43rd or 44th. I can't remember what bib number I started with, but I finished 8th. And I popped my first top 10. Wow. And that's when I was like, aha. And not necessarily like, oh, that's who they are, my competitors. It was more like, that's what a top 10 run feels like. Oh, I can do that again.
Wow.
And then it was, the next race, it was another top 15 and then another top 10. And then the next season, it started right out the gate. I was like, oh, I'm a top 5 skier. I came in and I just told myself that, like, I'm a top 5 skier on this World Cup and I'm going to win one before long. And it was only a couple of races into the season that I ended up winning up in Lake Louise. So
then how did you deal with interruptions? Like, because you mentioned you broke your femur. Like, how did you deal with those type of? Did you have a lot of injuries, and what were those interruptions like?
I did have a lot of injuries. I blew my left knee out for the first time when I was 17 in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Right after I raced my first World Cup. I had raced in Aspen, and then I went over to Steamboat to race there, and I ended up blowing that left knee out, and so I had to get it reconstructed and fixed. And I was literally just like a caged tiger going, let me back in the game. I can't believe I'm out. But in the meantime, I gained a lot of body awareness because I wanted to be well, and I knew that with this leg not being able to be trained, I wanted to make sure that it stayed as strong as my other side. And that's when I kind of started getting the idea of bilateral equality in my body and things like that. So I was like, okay, let me focus really hard on understanding what happened. So I delved really hard into the anatomy of a knee, what I had hurt and how I had hurt it, and what he had fixed in it, so that when I felt what was happening with it in my recovery, I kind of knew whether or not I was on the right track or not. So that was always a big thing for me. I ended up blowing my left knee out again, and then I actually broke my right femur, and I blew my left femur, and I blew my right knee out. That was the same crash. So that was the doozy. That was the big one. It was a month after I won my gold medal.
Wow.
And I miscalculated. Well, the new technology had come out, the new skis that had the shape in them, called a parabolic ski.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And I didn't want to ski on them before the Olympics in Nagano, so I raced on my old skis. I actually won my silver and my gold on the same skis 4 years apart.
Wow.
I know,
that's
right?
So
That'd be
unusual.
like you in the same skis.
Yeah.
And so then a month afterwards, I was trying to get the new skis going, and I ended up they turned so much tighter and skied such a tighter line. So I came in on the jump in Switzerland, and I ended up going off of it way far to the left. I was supposed to be going off towards you, and I was going towards the scoreboard. And so when I landed, I was in unfamiliar territory. My knees came up into my chest. I didn't have enough strength to be able to keep myself held up. So my knuckles went down to the ground, and I catapulted into the fence, and I broke that left femur and blew that right knee out in the same crash.
Wow.
And that was a big one. That was a big hiccup. And, the earlier knee injuries, those were more just like kind of, made me mad and made me feel like a caged tiger. Mm-hmm. And it was just like push, push, push. But with the femur break and the knee at the same time, that one was a big one. And I just think it's the biggest bone in your body. There was kind of more of like just kind of getting hit in the mouth a little bit more with that one. So that's the first time I met fear, was like, what if my bone marrow comes into my bloodstream while I'm up here on the mountain, or dropping in the helicopter down to the
So you're thinking
ER,
about that as you're rolling? I want to know what's going through your mind as you're rolling.
Okay, so as I'm rolling, so I hit the jump, I end up getting ready to go into the fence, and I think, okay, if I'm on my knuckles with my feet on the ground, and I'm still hauling. I'm still probably going like 70.
7.
And I looked at the fence and was like, I'm just going to kick my feet out to the left, and then I'll get spun around the right way, and I'll get my feet here, and I'll just go into the fence and just kind of absorb it, like you would think if you like jumped off of something really far, right? Well, what ended up happening is I noticed that the outside gate was there, and I was going to hit it. So I spun the other way, and when I went in to the fence, my tips, I didn't get all the way spun. So this tip went in this way, and this tip went in this way, and they came like that. So my legs basically went. So instead of, bending this way, they bent this way. And this femur blew out, and this knee blew out, and all my stuff came off. The fence spit me back out again. And as I was laying on the hill with my back to the fence, everything was numb. And I got super nervous that I had hurt my back or my neck, which was, the thing you fear the most. And so I rolled over. And as soon as I rolled over, the bottom half of both of my legs just kind of stayed there and the rest of me rolled. And I was like, and that's when, if you watch the video, you can see me just reach down and I just grab my femur and I'm just like, and you can feel it just start going against my hands. And the pain was gnarly. And I sat straight up. And when I sat up, the part of my bone that had broken ripped through the outside of my quad and almost came out the skin. And that's what hurt so much. And when I was like, ah, and just screamed super loud and grabbed it. And it was like, I wanted to squish it and put it back in place. And I wasn't sure what had happened. And when I felt the end of that piece of bone really close to the surface of the skin, I thought, what is that? What is that? What is that? And I started doing like my search around to try and figure out what it was. And when I found my kneecap in place and felt my hard bone out over here, that's when I realized that I had broken my femur. And it was really funny because by then our doctor, who was standing up on the jump, had run off the jump and run down to me. He had tripped and fallen and he was coming straight for me with his boots, and he just had to do like this barrel roll to the side. And I remember seeing him go shoo and shoot
right
down
past you?
right past me. And by the time I got my assessment done and figured out what had happened, he had gotten to me and had his chest kind of like on my boots and his hands up on my hands. And I felt like he was pushing on my boots with his chest, and I started kind of getting a little bit mad at him. Like I was just taking it out on whoever was closest. And that's when I looked up and I said, I broke my...
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, probably. Can you just lean back for me? We got to get you situated. And I was like, I'm not leaning back. I'm going to stay right here and I'm going to hold this thing as hard as I can like this. And he was like, gotcha. And so he just grabbed into and held my leg as well. And I just stayed there and waited. And, they brought a coat and brought it and put it underneath me so that I could stay a little more dry. And it took them 45 minutes to get me off the hill because the weather was iffy. And they had some other racers in the helicopter doing a little joyride. So they had to drop them off and then try and come. And the fog was in and out. So by the time they got me in the ambulance or in the helicopter, I knew I had had enough time to sit and think about what happens when you break a big bone like that. So I was super nervous. So when we got down to the hospital safely, I was like, okay. And I mean, that was just an all-encompassing, engulfing experience to just go through and try to live through.
Yeah. And you're in fear of the future of your career.
Yeah, at that point, you're not even thinking about your career. Honestly, it comes in that claustrophobic tunnel I talked about trying to avoid. Yeah. You're inevitably in that at that point. Just tunnel vision going, how do I not bleed to death? How do I not have bone marrow come in my bloodstream? How does, who's going to take care of me? And then the amount of pain that I had in my leg was more severe than anything I had ever felt. And I have a pretty good pain tolerance. So I was definitely not very pleasant to anybody until they finally did a femoral block. And when they blocked my femur, I started apologizing left and right. I'm sorry. I'm sure I yelled and insulted everybody in here. And then I had it fixed right there. 2 days later, I was in Vail. And I had some damage to my femoral artery. Oh, wow. And so it was a while of just kind of trying to keep it organized, and I wouldn't even let him touch my right knee. It was like, I remember when I went to go on the hill, when I went to go help them get the coat underneath me, I remember sticking my right heel in the snow and my knuckles and pushing up to help them get the coat under me. And I said out loud on the hill, I blew my right knee out too. Like it was that matter of fact, just whoosh. But that's when I realized the magnitude of, oh no, I broke my femur, because I knew what a blown out knee felt like. I had done that twice before already. Yeah. And so to have that one be gone now, I was like, don't touch, off limits. Yeah. And I wouldn't let anybody touch my right knee because I was just so concerned about my left femur and getting it situated and straight. It's different when you break a piece of your structure. Yeah, right. As opposed to your soft tissue. Right, interesting. Very different mentality and a very, very different recovery.
What was the rehab like? I mean, the rehab must have been intense.
It was intense. It was intense. And I remember my father said, just promise me that you will just work hard and be patient enough to be a healthy woman again in your life. And I don't care if you ever... It's been a minute. I don't care if you ever ski again. I know you might, but I don't. I just want you to be a healthy woman again. And that was what I spent my time focusing on. And it was a long time, but I was engulfed in the injury the whole time of just the whole process of it, of, how can I be a good participant in this process? Because you have so many doctors and therapists that are, have a vested interest in making sure that you're okay.
Yeah.
So was following the rules. I remember the first time I saw my x-ray of my set femur, humongous plate and 8 screws through it. And the first question I had was, how long does that have to stay in there?
Forever.
And Stedman was like, most people leave it in forever, but I'd imagine we'll be taking theirs back out. So sure enough, at a year and 2 days post-set, they took my plate out and took my screws out and filled all of that broken bone, or bone openings, basically, because the screws went all the way through my bone.
Wow.
And the bottom of the plate went through the condyle. So they took all that out, packed it in with cadaver bone, and I was back to having a broken leg again for another, 6 months or so. So It was 1 year and 9 months and 12 days before I skied again. And that was a very, very long time.
Wow, that is.
And in that time, I was 29 or so.
What year was that?
It was 1998.
Wow.
It was actually March 13th, Friday the 13th.
So, did you continue to race after that, or did you when
I did. So I came back
soon after that?
I came back, and that's when I started having to ski with fear.
Yeah,
and have fear on board, and be like, this is what this is like, and this is what other people have been experiencing. And I think that's why I had that mind-body connection for the next 2 years of my career, was trying to get back on the horse that bucked me off and to race at 100% again, and knowing that, my body was compromised and probably compromised forever. So I met fear and started skiing again, and it was super sketchy. But then I wanted to get my bearings back, and my bearings were Olympic level of competition. That's where I was at when I hurt myself. So I was like, I got to go back to the games again. Plus they're in Salt Lake City in 2002. So let me get back in the saddle and, ride this bucking bronco called ski racing. And so I did, and I made it to the Salt Lake Games, and I competed in the Salt Lake Games. And had I drawn a different number, I think honestly I would have gotten a medal there too. So I got back in the saddle, but I was like, Salt Lake was over, and I was like, done. Love you. It's been wonderful, but my body can't take any more of this. It was
I want to go back a few years earlier, because we got ahead of ourselves, and I wanted to talk about winning Olympic gold and silver, and also you being so dominant World Cup. I mean, right. You were really the first one that won back-to-back World Cup. I mean, you started sort of a generation of inspiration for others. Can you talk about all of those? All of those.
Yeah, I would love to. So the 94 Olympics in Lillehammer were my first games, and I was just wanting to go to the Olympics and get the Olympic jitters out of my system, just kind of get the feel for, being an Olympian, and didn't have much pressure or expectation on myself. I'd only popped a couple of top 10s in downhill. And so, I wasn't really expecting to medal, actually. And then when I started the training process, which is 3 training runs before you actually race, I ended up winning one of those training runs. And it was like, this could be fast tracking a little bit. This could happen, right? And so I remember getting super, super anxious and excited about it, and going through the mental process of not overthinking any of it too much, just kind of going with the flow. And I loved the downhill. It was super my style, big jumps, big turns, lots of speed. I was into it and was comfortable. And so I was like, yeah, why not? Let's go for it. And I won the last training run. And so all I had to do in my mind was just keep my composure and stay peaceful enough to then repeat the performance again the next day. Because the conditions weren't going to change that much. The weather wasn't coming in. There was a little bit of wind, but it wasn't a factor because of the way the course is set. So, boom, repeat the next day, and then I win a silver medal, and it's like, hi, who are you? Where'd you come from? And where'd you get your name? And that's kind of a funny name, and and whatnot. I remember Tommy Moe and Diane Rolfe had both won in downhill and Super G, and we all stayed in this log cabin house at the top of the hill in Norway. And I remember when I got to the house to move in for the women's downhill, they said, we're going to, here's all these different rooms and whatever. And I said, I want the room that Diane stayed in. And they said, well, it's actually ironically the same room Tommy stayed in. And I was like, well, I definitely want that room. So I stayed in the same room that Tommy and Diane both stayed in to win their medal. So all three of us stayed in the same room and won medals at the Olympics in those games. So that room is like, I watched Dan Jansen win the 1,000. I was like jumping up and down on the couch, screaming at the top of my lungs, watching this fuzzy little TV to be able to see him race. And I remember just being so elated. And that was a huge part of my inspiration for the next day was like, yes, Team USA is on a roll. I want to join that party. So yeah, the next day it was an amazing day. And the funniest part about that day that I haven't told a lot of people, and I'm sure my dad would giggle if he could hear me say it. He's since passed, but when I gave my dad a hug, and he was like, I'm so proud of you. Way to go. Congratulations. And then he whispered in my ear, it's the wrong color. And I was like, I know it's the wrong color. Get in line.
Just wait for 4 years.
But it was this little like carrot dangle, but just how much time we had spent working as a family and how much sacrifice that had been made and just how close and tight and transparent of a relationship we always had. He was like the perfect person to be able to be like, good job, however, And so I was like, that kept me.
That must have fueled you.
It totally fueled me, for sure. But it was so funny at the same time, too, because it was like the only person who could actually say what I was thinking and say it out loud and have it actually stick and work, right? It was like, my dad, so funny. Then it was, boom, I got this. And then it was, I'm the one to beat come 4 years later, right? So at that point, when I won that silver in Lillehammer, I was catapulted. I think I won. I think I was top 3 in the next race at the end of the season. And then the next season when I came in, I was like, I am the person to beat this next season. And my goal was a downhill title. And I didn't really pay attention to much of, who had and hadn't won or whatever. I just knew that was right out in front of me and that was my target. So yeah, that next year I won the World Cup downhill title for the first time in the history of North American male or female.
Wow, that's amazing.
And that was a really big deal. And at the time, I was just kind of doing my thing and racing and not really paying as much attention to like these huge pioneering steps that I was kind of laying down in the sport for the next gen. And then I went and repeated it again the next season and won the World Championships, got a silver and a gold and a bronze in the World Championships in downhill and Super G that next year as well. So then it was like, okay, let's go. I want gold. And so I had double gold on my mind when I went into Nagano. And I actually won the biggest popularity contest of my life when I was voted to be the flag bearer for the Nagano Games.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
But I had crashed in RA Sweden and got whiplash and jacked myself up. So I was like, therapy at home, flag in the opening ceremonies, therapy at home. And I chose, I want 2 gold medals more than I want to carry the flag in the opening ceremonies.
You traded it out for a gold medal.
Such a hard choice. Literally one of the hardest decisions I've had to make in my life. But I stayed home and I trained. And when I got over to the games, I ended up rolling my ankle in volleyball practice and so I never
why were you practicing volleyball?
Because we played volleyball all the time. That was one of our fun, let's play some volleyball. And one of the Swiss guys had gone up to do a big hit and I was like, I can block him. And I did succeed with the block, but I landed on like a shoe or something and rolled my ankle. So then it was the Vince Lombardi Adversity Makes Heroes thing. I was like, I got this, I'm gonna do this. And then I had to make another decision, which was I chose not to ski on the race hill at all before I raced it because the weather had been weird and I knew that the course was going to feel bad. So I was like, I'm not skiing on that. I don't want to have a yucky feeling. I'm just going to go with no feeling at all. You just wanted to deal with it. I'm just going to deal with whatever comes. Okay. And I was actually the only person who hadn't skied on the race hill.
Wow.
The day that I raced.
That sounds so unusual.
The Super G. So it was all these circumstances were unusual. So I was just like, well, since we're in the process of being unusual, let me go ahead and win my first Super G too and just have it be the Olympic Games. So my mindset was just, all in, anything is possible. And I had a teammate grab me and ride the chairlift with me. And she looks at me and she goes, this course has your name written all over it. It's set like a downhill. You're warming up on your downhill skis. You're going to race on your downhill skis. This is your race to lose. You need to just drop the hammer and win this bad boy today. And she's racing in the same Olympic race as me. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how cool is this that I have a teammate propping me up that much? It was amazing. And then she said, and when you do win, I'll bring the whole team down to watch you get your medal.
Wow.
And I was like, Ooh, I like the idea of that, right? Because in an individual sport, sometimes it's lonely at the top. So it was great to have the feeling of, have everybody come watch.
But sorry, I just want to say, but this was all inspired by your silver medal and your dad whispering in your ear. Like
a lot of it was inspired by that, for sure. Yeah,
which is amazing. But I'm geeking out on this one thing. Like when you went into the World Cup 95 to 96, in 96, did you feel nervous because you wanted to be a double seat? Like, were you like, oh, I really want this bad?
Yes. And I have a lot of pressure on myself, and the country has a lot of pressure on me.
Yeah.
Everybody's expecting me to do it and to win. And and I was really, at that point, I was leaning in to try and embrace all of that. And so one of the things I did to try and embrace it was I had my art teacher from high school. He had painted all of my helmets, and I had him paint another one for the Olympics. And I told him, just paint whatever you want on it. I don't really know. Just something inspirational and timely. Well, it was the year of the Bengal tiger, so he painted a Bengal tiger on my helmet. And Mark Girardelli in the World Championships in '93 had coined me as a tiger. He had told me, wow, you raced like a tiger today. And so everybody kind of knew that was a little bit of a nickname of mine. So he painted the tiger helmet, and that was another like Michael Johnson gold shoes lean in, right? Like, I gotta own this. This is happening. And funny story about my helmet, actually. Here goes a little tangent, but it's a fun one.
This is good.
Okay, so I am going into the lodge to get ready and have my little moment in the lodge before I then go to the start, and then I race in my Olympic run. And I've got my helmet off and I've got it in my hand. And I walk in, and Jean-Luc Crétier, who had just won the men's downhill, is walking out of the lodge to go train. And he goes, your turn, and gives me a big high five. And he continues with his high five all the way down and connects with me in the
rear end.
And smacks me hard, like, the athletic, like basketball, like.
That's going to leave a mark.
And I dropped my helmet on the ground in the restaurant, and I actually cracked my helmet right at the two pins that hold it together, just at, right on the edge of the main bucket. Like, and so then I'm looking at it going, oh no. And it's like the bottom mouth and teeth of the tiger and all this. Plus it's my face mask that protects my face if I crash. So I'm like, oh no. And I was in such mode of like freight train on the tracks, not unstoppable, that I had a solution within a nanosecond in my mind. I was like, I'll just go to the start early and I'll have Cookie fix it. He's my service tech who does my skis.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went down to the start, and when I got there, I was like, kind of dropped my helmet. And he was like, I got it. And he grabs it from me. And as I turned to walk away and I put my headphone on my ear, I hear the duct tape go. And I'm like,
nothing duct tape.
Nothing better than duct tape, right? It was amazing. And I'm thinking, great, I'm this dirtbag from Idaho who's going to race in the Olympics with duct tape on my helmet.
What's she got Scotch tape on her helmet for?
And so it was so funny. I got down there to the race, and he had duct taped my helmet, and I just was kind of like no naysayers at this point, right? And I heard Ken Reed from Canada say on camera, Picabo Street with an early draw today. She's got number 2. We'll just have to see how that turns out. Totally benign statement, right? Just stating the facts. I don't know why, Brian, but it was just like he might as well have just given me a nitro pill, because I was just like, you'll see how this turns out. And I just remember just kind of raging inside a little bit about it. Like, I grabbed a gear with that one, and then I grabbed another gear when Markin ran number 1, and she ran the line on the top of the course that I wanted to run. And I was like, that's doable. I'm going, grab another gear. And then when I heard my teammate Clarkie cheering for me when I left the start, it was, that was 6th gear, and I was off and running from there. And it was a radical, like all in, nothing left to chance kind of run that I took.
Do you remember every moment of it?
I remember every
Like I could stop a video and I'd be like, what was in your mind right there?
100%.
Wow.
Every nanosecond, the whole way down the course. Yeah. Huge mistake around the basketball turn. Absolutely furious at how low I had gotten, and knew that I had potentially dumped a bunch of speed. And so I just skied this bad boy straight line through the next 4 gates that I knew. And this was a calculation too. I knew no one was going to be able to ski the same line, because every number that went by me, they were going to end up in my rut. And in my, like on a race car track, it's the stuff that comes off the tires that ends up over there, right? Well, I was delivering the same kind of shrapnel out off of my skis as I made my turns, and I knew nobody was going to be able to ski that straight of a line, and I just dove in on the gates super hard, and then launched off the bottom 2 jumps and tried to get my skis swimming and stay left of center off the bottom jump because the jump was pulling hard to the right and we could run into the finish pole if we were too far. And I could hear my coach in my head on the radio saying to me, stay left off the bottom jump, stay left off the bottom jump. And that was all I was thinking about. And as I crossed the line and I saw that I had beat Markin by like 1.16, no, 1.35 actually.
Wow.
I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
I can't believe I just beat her by that. And I had seen her on the top ski great. So I was like, she had a good run. So that's when I pumped the one just in case, because I didn't know how the day was going to turn out.
But then,
ran early.
and especially since you weren't happy with what happened around that, what would you call it, the basketball?
Yeah, the basketball turn, right? And I was going to be so frustrated if I had given it away. But at the same time, it was a Super G, and I wasn't supposed to win the Super G.
Yeah.
And then I won it by 1/100th of a second. And I just remember being completely beside myself and having so much fun with it too, though, because my friend Alexandra Meisitzer from Austria and I had made a pact to medal together at the Olympics the year before in March. And there we were winning together.
So amazing.
And it was absolutely amazing. And I called my mom to tell her I had won, and she was like, wait, you won today? It was a Super G. And I'm like, I know, I won the Super G today. And she was like, what is happening? And so yeah, everybody got together. We all went down to the ceremony, and I remember it was a full moon. The Japanese people are amazing at celebrating performances, and at the Olympics was no different. And I remember walking out on the big stage, and it was like a raised platform stage. Yeah. So we had to step up onto it, and everybody was down like kind of below, like I was a rock star in a concert, like walking in to do my performance, And then I stood behind the podium, and when they announced the MC announced who was going to be giving the medals out, it was really one of the most pivotal moments in my life. And when I realized this was my destiny and this was supposed to happen, and I tried to derail this train as many times as I could, and I didn't pull it off. When I was 17 years old, my dad broke his arm in karate class. And he used to drive the bus for the Sun Valley Resort, and he drove Jean-Claude Keely on the bus. And he told him about me one day, and he said, my daughter's on the ski team. Her dream is to win an Olympic gold medal one day. And he said, right on, what's her name? I'll keep an eye out for her. And when I got up there behind the podium to receive my medal, the MC announced and delivered, and handing out the gold medal today will be Jean-Claude Keely from France. And I was just like, yes, absolute hot mess. Like, I was so convicted that I'm going to be strong. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to keep it together. And I mean, my knees literally went weak. I had to lock them out and hold them straight. And I looked over, and my father was at the bottom of the flagpole, and he just had buried his face in his hands and was crying. And I was just like, this is such a magical moment. And then when I stepped up there and John put the medal around my neck, and I didn't think he would have remembered, right? And he grabbed my elbows and he looked at me and he said, congratulations, your father told me you were going to do this when you were a kid, and I'm so honored to be here to give this to you.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like,
wow.
It's magic. It's magic. Yeah.
That is an amazing story.
It was awesome. It was like full circle, right? I was so
wow.
glad I had done all the work, and I'm so glad I had listened to everybody, and I'm so glad I had worked so hard. And
the triangle of you with your dad and Jean-Claude Keely, and then just all looking at each other.
Yeah,
wow.
It was an amazing moment.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then when I listened to the anthem, which I had practiced singing with my mom so that I could like sing it and belt it out and do well. And I was hoping it would keep me from crying, but I was just a hot mess by then. And when Micey and I remember looking at each other on the podium and kind of giggling, we had I think it's the smallest margin in the history of an Olympic podium. Yeah. So I won by 1/100th of a second. And then Mickey was second by 3 or 4 100ths. And then Micey was right behind her by 2 or 3 as well.
Wow.
So all within 1/10 of a second of each other. So it was just like meant to be, right?
Yeah.
And so we were kind of giggling about it. And then when we got off the stage, my brother was the first person to me. And he's like, he gave me a hug and he said, congratulations, you're my hero. And I started like having another moment of like, oh, there's too many of these moments. And then he whispered in my ear, but you're always going to be my dumb little sister. And I was like, yes, I'm much more familiar with the dumb little sister role.
But would your dad say, this is what I want to know, fast forward from saying silver medals or the wrong color?
My dad just said, congratulations, champ.
Oh.
You did it.
That's amazing.
And I was kind of hoping you would say, that one's the right color, but in the moment kind of spoke for itself.
That's not what you're supposed to say, Dad.
But no, he said you did it.
That's amazing.
Congratulations, champ, you did it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that is a great story.
Yeah, it was amazing. And you know, my Olympic life was incredible and still exists today, right?
Yeah,
like never former.
Yep.
Once an Olympian,
absolutely.
always Olympian.
Yep.
And I just try and spread the Olympic spirit and the love and light of it everywhere I go, so that everybody, you know, gets kind of interested. Like, who are you and what have you done? And I get the excuse to talk about the Olympics and how awesome they are and how wonderful.
And
it was
what
to
about
represent Team
and
USA.
what about the tools that we've talked about that you implemented during your entire career, and how have you used those tools, whether they're mental? Because I feel like you did a lot of mental visualization, like manifestation, verbal. I feel you were really into that. And, you know, how did you use that in your life after gold?
So I didn't use the same verbiage, but I used a lot of the same techniques to get through. It was, and then mentoring young athletes as well, right? And sitting down with them and before you go kind of, you know, purge onto them the info about how you did it. It was getting to know them a little bit and kind of getting in their head a little bit to then be able to decide whether it was something I learned from a competitor, something I learned from myself, something that was collective, something to avoid, whether to talk in a positive way or a negative way with them, you know, because some people do want to talk about their negative, their fears and their anxieties and stuff like that, and to work through them. And then there's a lot of athletes who don't want to talk about that stuff, and you just stay all in the positive. So learning how to mentor and kind of pay it forward. But honestly, as a parent, not a lot of what I did as an athlete has parlayed into being a mom, you know, back to the drawing board and trying to figure it all out, and this amazing little human being in your hands without any kind of an instruction manual. And you just have to kind of figure it out. And a different kind of reward and a different kind of feeling in your belly after, you know, raising kiddos. So, but in my life, I think now, over the last few years, I've started to really kind of lean into who I am, what I've done, and what I want to do now that my boys are old enough that I've got time to pay it forward and to make a difference in people's lives. And now I find that some of those skills are coming back, and it's that positive self-talk and positive affirmation. It's accepting a compliment when it comes my way instead of like side swinging it and saying, you know, I'll land somewhere else. I'm grinding. It's like, no, allowing myself to accept that I did work hard to earn what I have, and what I have is inspiring for others, and to go ahead and use it to pay it forward and be a lighthouse.
And what's it like being here at the Olympic and Paralympic Museum? I mean, like, because you're talking about the stories that you have. It's the fabric of sports as we, as American athletes, contribute to this. What's it like to walk around and see that you're a part of this fabric here?
The museum is amazing to me. And the Olympics and Paralympics are so moving for myself as an Olympian and for everybody else watching. And to know that I'm a part of that whole piece of life, it's a little intimidating with some of the athletes that I've met, because wow, have they, you know, forged some and broken some barriers and you know, laid down some groundwork. Some of them that are just such spectacular human beings and have just done so much. Some of them worked so hard and overcame so much to be an Olympian and then to succeed. And then you're around the para athletes and just how much they've gone through in order to succeed as well. I feel so honored and like inspired to just keep going with my life and keep charging through. But ultimately the biggest thing is, I think, is to spread the light and spread the spirit of it, and to keep people thinking about it and remembering. And the museum, in my opinion, the coolest thing for me here is how much history to just watch, like, that's what figure skates used to look like, and now this is what they look like, or that's what skis used to look like, and now this is what they look like, and that's what athletes used to look like, and now this is what they look like. Just the passing of time right before your eyes and all of this memorabilia is so spectacular. And in some ways, as you get older, this experience coming through the museum moves you more or as much as the Olympics do when they actually take place. So, I mean, it's an honor to be a part of it for sure, and I love to be moved by it. I just got goosebumps.
I did too.
Again.
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. This was a
Absolutely.
great conversation.
Likewise.
Yeah, thanks for being
Thanks for
here.
the good questions. Appreciate it.